Hey guys, welcome to the Titanium Vault. I'm your host, RJ Bates. Today I'm sitting down with fellow Drip 2020 speaker, Chris Jefferson. How you doing, man?
I'm good, brother, man. How are you?
Good. It's nice to put a voice to the name and connect. I know you and I have been friends on Facebook and Instagram for quite a while, so I'm excited for today's interview and sit down and talk about some deals that you're currently working on and what you're doing in real estate investing. So for the people that don't know who you are, give them a brief breakdown of what it is that you do in real estate.
Yeah, man. I guess a quick breakdown. I'm a 12-year veteran, 10 years of making money, right? So there's 2 years there of being broke, struggling, trying to figure out how to do a deal.
Right.
But been kind of rolling hard for 10 years. Started out doing wholesaling. Took me a couple years, obviously, to get my first deal, like I said. Once I got that first deal, my goal at the time, which, made a lot of sense in the moment. In hindsight, it's always not the best idea. But so I jumped from wholesaling to rehabbing super fast. I did a few wholesale deals and then went straight to rehabbing. And this is, 2010, right? So this is back when, you wanted to buy 5 houses, you go on the MLS. And by the end of the day, you got 5 houses, right? Nowadays, it might take you 5 months to find a deal on the MLS.
Right.
So I started out doing a bunch of fix and flip. We're doing about 20, 30 of those a year, and transitioned in 2013 into doing new construction and infill development. So I still kept doing a lot of fix and flip, but I got into infill development because, deals started to get fewer and farther between.
Right.
So, saw abundance of lots down in the city. So we started purchasing some of those, building new construction houses. And so 2015, 2016, got a big flipping operation. We're doing a lot of properties and start running into cash flow issues, right? If anybody's ever done a lot of fix and flip, I think at the time we had about 26 active flips and or new builds. So we're spending, over $200,000 a month just to keep the lights on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And things started getting tight. And I say to my operations manager, I say, hey, look, man, we got to figure out how to come up with some more monthly revenue. And we had always done our own marketing for deals, right? So we had always done our own marketing, but I only cherry picked what I wanted. Everything else, we just kind of threw it away. I just bought the leads that I wanted to buy. So it was easy for us to transition back into doing wholesaling at the time.
Yep.
Started wholesaling again and worked out really well. We started making a lot of money from it. And I realized pretty fast that, it was taking, 6, 12, 18 months sometimes to build a house or to do a large scale renovation. I did renovations where the budgets were over 100,000, right?
Gotcha.
And we realized pretty fast that, wait a second, we could just wholesale and make the revenue stream that we're looking for. And what occurred to me, right, is that flipping is for people who can't source their own deals, right?
Yep.
If you can source your own deals and wholesale them and wholesale those and get good margin, you're already flipping. You don't really need to go into being a rehabber also, right? And so the goal switched into making a focus on doing wholesaling and then starting to build up more residual income. So I did a apartment development. We did a $2 million project here in Richmond where we bought a 23-unit apartment complex. That was back in 2017. We finished that late last year. So now we've got that rented up. We're looking for some more apartment complexes. And now we've transitioned into doing just a ton of wholesale deals. And we've kind of found the fun again, so to speak, being in the wholesale business.
I got you, man. That's an incredible journey going from struggling at the beginning, taking 2 years to get your deal, wholesaling, rehabbing, then development, now back into wholesaling and also doing multifamily. I see a lot of people that kind of break out of wholesaling and they want to get into rehabbing or development, something along those lines. From your perspective, looking back at it, what was the mindset that you had that made you want to make that transition from wholesaler to rehabber? What was the mindset there?
So I love that question, right? So at the time, the mindset was, well, hey, to grow and scale, in your mind, you're like, I got to be a rehabber,
right?
And so, you're trying to transition to that as quickly as possible. What I tell people now is that, wholesaling, right, at the end of the day is the bottom of the totem pole.
Right.
And in terms of the real estate hierarchy, you've got rehabbing, you've got landlord, being a landlord, you've got development, builder. Wholesaling is like bottom of the barrel, right? But what's happened in the last 5 to 6 years is wholesaling has transitioned from a pen and paper business, right? So when I first started, you're writing yellow letters by hand, right? You're knocking on people's doors.
Right.
There was no text message services. There were no voicemail drop services.
Right.
Wholesaling has transitioned into a more of almost a tech business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's more based now on not pen and paper, but systems and processes. So like if you can develop strong and good systems and processes, you can now really get a wholesale business doing some consistent volume on a monthly basis. So, that's what I know now, right? I didn't know that back then at that time. So at the time, the thought was, well, if I want to be a real estate guy, if I want to be a real estate investor, I got to actually buy property. And, that transitioned us into rehabbing.
Well, and I'm going to take it even a step further. Just based off of what you told me, you'd only done, a few wholesale deals before you became a rehabber. So in all reality, you weren't really a good wholesaler yet.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely.
And part of the reason why I'm assuming you made the decision you want to go to rehabber is because you thought I can make more money rehabbing, right?
Absolutely correct.
So you weren't making enough money wholesaling, so you're like, okay, I'm going to just transition to go get bigger checks.
Yeah, it's funny, man, you say that, right? So like at that time, deals were like hitting a $10,000 wholesale, right, was like amazing, right?
Right.
Now it's like, damn, that's not that wasn't the best deal.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, it was just, like you said, it was the nature of, hey, I want to make more money. I want to scale quickly. And we were in a different environment too. So that's 2010 when, there weren't as many active people, right, in the market.
There weren't Facebook groups with 90,000+ people.
Definitely was not that, man. Yeah, there was none of that going on for sure.
So, yeah, I mean, it's funny how the evolution, not only for the industry, the technology that now we use as wholesalers, but also just your mindset and how you've grown as an investor. And now you're viewing things much differently. Like you said, the $10,000 wholesale fee back in the day was, I mean, you were probably, high-fiving everybody thinking.
I was going nuts, man.
Exactly.
Absolutely,
now it's kind of like, well, what was the cost to get that deal? Was that like $3,000 or $4,000 to get it? And what was the time and energy wasted on it? Like, was it even profitable?
Right.
So that's the difference that I think almost everybody that's been in this several years kind of goes along the lines. I just wanted to bring light to, if you are a wholesaler and you're thinking about becoming a rehabber, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Make sure you aren't doing it because you think, well, I can do the same volume and get bigger checks. You're essentially trying to solve the problem because you're saying I'm not really good. And at the end of the day, it's all about marketing. Like,
exactly.
That's what I tell everybody. Like, we're not 100%. Investors, we're marketers. Like, everybody that's good at this has to be great at marketing. And so
when people say, hey, what do you do, right? The non-real estate folks, right?
Right.
What I explained, I do sales and marketing.
Yeah.
And so what happens is wholesalers want to eagerly make that transition only because being a wholesaler is hard ass work.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so when you're at the bottom of the barrel, you've got to constantly grind this business out. Yep. And you can be successful with it. So now the mindset is adjusted. So, a couple of years ago, what we started to look at things as, hey, look, if we can do 10 deals a month and set that as a target, and on average do at least 10,000 a deal, it's $100,000, right? How many houses do we have to turn in the course of a year, and how quickly do we have to do that? How many employees do we need to be able to do that to make that same rev, right?
Yep.
So what you realize is building the systems and processes for a wholesale business is actually way easier. The other piece to that is there's nothing more critical, in my opinion, in this business than being direct to seller, right? Yep. So when you're in that wholesale seat, you now really control the deal. When you don't do your own direct to seller marketing, you're at the mercy of how that deal is brought to you, right? Mm-hmm. So when that wholesaler or that agent brings that deal to you, they're saying, hey, this would be a good rental property. Hey, there's seller financing available on this deal.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you could do contract for deed on this. So like you're stuck how somebody brings you that deal.
Yep.
When you control your own marketing, when you're direct to seller in your business, now it doesn't mean you can't be a landlord or you can't do seller financing or subject to, but you control, that deal process or that deal, what those deals look like. And so that's my favorite part of kind of where my business is at right now.
And part of being an entrepreneur is, aren't we all kind of control freaks anyways? Isn't that why we become
100%.
entrepreneurs? Like,
100%, man.
so
Because we
it's
don't want anybody
like,
else to tell us what to do.
right. So
Yeah.
it's honestly kind of weird. And you brought up a good point about rehabbers. Like, I'm not going to say unanimously, because I've interviewed people like Don Costa and Luke Weber that are great rehabbers, and they do all of their own marketing and they go direct to seller. But I do know a ton of rehabbers that they're only buying from wholesalers.
Right.
And it's funny because when you said that, I started thinking about all of my rehab projects, and almost
Right.
all of them come from wholesalers
Right.
for
Yeah.
whatever reason. And you know what? It's funny because when we go out and do our own deals, we're buying deeper, and we look at it and we say, dude, we could wholesale this and make just as much as if we were to rehab this. Like, why wouldn't we want to just go ahead and wholesale it? And we wait, now 2019 was a year of change for us. We were where you probably were a couple of years ago, where cash flow issues as a rehabber. That's another thing that wholesalers don't understand.
Oh man.
One thing, when you rehab one property, seems really easy.
Yep.
Times that by 10 or 20, like you were saying, like 26 projects going on, dude, you could
it's
have
nuts, man.
Oh yeah, you could have, be cashing $300,000 worth of checks in a month and be like, yeah, I'm 50 light.
Dude,
Like,
it's crazy, man. I remember days, in my former life, right, as a rehabber.
right.
I remember days, I'd sell a couple properties in a month and bring in, 100, 200, 300,000 bucks, right? And I'd turn around 3 weeks later and I've got $10,000 still left over. That's it, right? Yeah. And so it's being a rehabber is a tough business. There's people that are really successful with it, and you can do that, right? But if you're going to do it, you got to be direct to seller, in my opinion.
Oh, you have to.
One thing that saved my ass for sure is when I started having those cash flow issues and I had to take a look at different projects that I had going on. I had to make quick, swift decisions and say, I sold a bunch of properties when we were in the middle of developing, right? Mm-hmm. Just to get debt off. You know what I mean? And had to make those decisions. But all those things kind of led down the path of getting to the next spot. That's how we found hotels, right? I remember, I did the HGTV stuff, right? So the crazy rehabs, we've put showers, our bath, freestanding tubs and showers and all this stuff, right? And people love the pictures and all of that. That's all cool, right? But the most important thing is revenue, right? And so what we started realizing, I'm like, man, we're doing all these crazy houses. And I'm looking at comps one day, and I'm selling houses at, I think at the time, around 400,000, right? Brand new, fully built house to the nines, crazy. Then I'm checking comps, and I'm seeing houses go for 350, right? That hardly have any upgrades at all.
Right.
And so I'm thinking, I'm like, wait a second. If somebody's buying that for 350, that means there's a market for just a regular house.
Right.
So it means something to somebody to get a decent deal, catch $50,000 in equity.
Yep.
And then they can make the upgrades they want or whatever the case might be. So it's like, hey man, like I've got to make an adjustment on that. Right. Yep. And so that's how we shifted into that hotel model.
Well, it goes back to, you and I were just talking about this before, about here in 2020, you can feel like you know somebody and you never actually spoken to them before, like you and I, and in business, it's kind of funny, especially in real estate. Everybody loves the pretty pictures, right? And so you post the pretty pictures of this beautiful rehab that you did, and everybody tells you how awesome you are. Yep. At the end of the day, it's kind of like, am I doing it for likes and comments, or am I doing this for money? And I go to work to make money. I have to, I got to pay for my babies, food, housing. Like, eventually we want to get to the point where we're creating generational wealth, right? Isn't that what we always say?
110%.
Right. And so I don't get any money off of Facebook likes. or
Right.
Instagram likes. You know, so I go post something, it gets 500 likes. Oh man, this post is blowing up. I never deposited a check from getting 500 likes from Facebook.
Yeah, it's
And
interesting, man. Go ahead. Yeah.
and then I was just gonna say, wholetails. I don't ever post pictures of wholetails, but in all
Right. Yeah.
reality, people should be so excited about that if they actually understand the thought process of, because we did really good job of marketing. We actually
Correct.
got a property, we bought deep, and we sold it with very minimal effort on our parts. That's called efficiency within business, and that should be something that's applauded. But we don't want to do it because it's like, well, it's kind of got still an ugly bathroom, or the kitchen doesn't have the beautiful granite countertops it's got Formica still. But that's okay because of the neighborhood it's in. And so it's funny, the world that we live in, and I think people get wrapped up in it, man. It's kind of
Oh
like
yeah.
endorphins, you know. It's like they need that hit of like, I got to get, the public's got to tell me how awesome I am, and that's not
Well,
really
that's part of the tough part, right? You know, I remember when I was doing all those crazy projects, and I'm getting high fives all around town. People pat me on the back all day, every day, and oh man, your houses are gorgeous, or I want a house from you, and that kind of deal. And at the end of the day, right, what I had to figure out and understand for myself was, well, I still got to make money, like you
right.
said, right? And so why am I doing 20 houses in a year and I don't have the money sitting around that I feel like I should have
Yep.
sitting around? But then you look at your landlord buddies, the guys, you got buddies that they don't do anything but rentals, right?
Right.
They don't do any fix and flip. They don't do any of that stuff. And then you look at them and you're like, well, wait a second. So you got 50 doors. I sold all of mine, right?
Right.
You're sitting on 50 doors, and then you got 10, 15,000 net cash, flow coming in a month.
And they're the most
I kind of
chill,
rather that. Oh
relaxed
man,
guys of all time.
yeah, man,
Nobody's
they're
patting
looking
them
at
on the
you.
back, but man, they're just living the life.
That's the funny part, right? So the builder rehabber gets those pats on the back for doing the
Right.
fancy stuff. They're just doing a regular house, man, and fix it up, get a tenant in, that kind of deal.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, man, this business is about making money, right? It's about what's the rate of return, what equity do you have, and at some point we've got as people in this business, we've got to focus on that part of it. I hired some consultants back in 2017 to come in and take a deep dive look at what my business was doing, right? And the Harvard educated guy came in, him and his wife, and they had worked with a lot of bigger small businesses in town. And so they came in, and at the time I had a construction business, had my development business, and I had a wholesale business. Okay. And so we're sitting down, first meeting, looking at financials, looking at tax returns. And, they're asking me like, hey, look, you need to shut down your construction business. And I'm like, well, why? Right. And I'm like, it makes me some extra money every month.
Right.
So they say, hey, look, this is what I want you to do. I want you to, for the next 2 weeks before we meet again, I want you to track every day in 15-minute or 30-minute intervals and monitor. Let's look at your time and see where you're contributing your time. So almost all of my time was going to other people's projects, not even my own development projects.
Wow.
So, my projects are slowing down, right? Because I got somebody I'm doing a renovation for, and they're driving by their house and they want to know why a subcontractor isn't there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've got to stop what I'm doing and run over there to deal with that. But here's the funny thing. One thing they said to me in that meeting is, they said, hey, what does this LLC over here do, right? And I said, well, hey, that's my wholesale business. I don't need any help from you with that, right? And so the wife says to me, she says, well, wait a second. Why are you not doing more wholesaling? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And she goes, hey, look, you got to shut your construction business down and you need to go all in on wholesaling. If that's the return you're getting inside your wholesale business, you need to blow that up, right? And I looked at the numbers, man, and I was just like, you know what? It makes perfect sense to go as hard as possible with the wholesale business. And like we've been talking about, that just siphons off and creates everything else for you.
And that changed your life right there. That
Oh,
advice.
it did 100%.
So let's talk about some of these deals that you're doing now.
Absolutely.
Break it down and give us some examples of what you're doing now.
Yeah, man. So we're doing some pretty cool stuff. Wholesaling is one of my favorite models right now.
Yep.
So, I'll talk a little bit about that. There's different confusion on what a wholesale deal is, I feel like sometimes. So I'll just say what it is for me. So a wholesale deal for me is a property that we acquire direct to seller, one that we actually close on, and we list it on the MLS by either doing a minimal amount of work to it, right? So, just getting it cleaned up or getting it cleaned out, changing the locks, things of that nature, and or coming in and doing a very light rehab, right? So, in my world, that means making it FHA compliant so that it can
Right.
pass an FHA inspection. So, we'll fix the chip paint. If there's any wood issues, we'll fix those. Any, structural issues or termite damage, that kind of thing. So we've been doing a lot of that. For example, I've got a deal right now that we just got an offer on yesterday, right? So about 30 days or so ago, I bought that property for $77,000. All right.
Okay.
And it's a nice little rancher, cool little house. So I paid $77,000 for it, used private money. Okay. And so now we've gone in, we've cleaned out the property, and we've painted the property. That's all we've done. Cleaned it out and painted it. All right. And so we've now got an offer on that property for $122,000.
Nice.
We listed it for 130, and we ended up getting an offer after about 30 days for 122,000. So that's we've probably got $1,500 in the place.
Right.
Right. And so, that's my version of rehabbing these days.
There you go. Hey, you and I are right on the same path right there, man. That's all we want to do. The same thing, those very minimal rehabs. I don't have a problem with doing flooring if it's needed, because that's like a 1-2 day max in and out. But really, we try to keep it just like you're doing. Minimal rehab, paint, maybe flooring, and a cleanup, and then put it on the market. On that deal there, you brought up that you want to rehab them to get them up to FHA compliance, right?
Right.
How are you dealing with the 90-day FHA guidelines when you are trying to sell it? I mean, you pretty much just can't accept the FHA offers, right?
Yeah, it's a great question, man. So here's what I do on my wholesale deals. So for the first 60 days, and we haven't ran into this issue yet, but for the first 60 days, we put in the agent remarks on the listing that only are not no FHA financing can be accepted.
Right.
Right. And so you'll still have FHA buyers call, like their agents call and inquire about it. And we'll just explain to them that, we recently acquired the property. We're looking to turn it around. And, we don't have the time right now to wait for that 90-day flip rule to expire. And the fallback on that is if we get close to that, then we'll start to entertain, once we hit 60 days on a property, if we've got it listed. And again, this hasn't happened yet, so this is just plan in action. If we get to 60 days and a hotel hasn't sold, then we'll make the transition into taking that off the agent remarks, being willing to accept, some FHA financing on a property. But what I've found is even if we're not accepting the FHA financing, we want it to be FHA compliant, because typically that's what buyers are coming in kind of looking for on these wholesale deals, and we sell them as is also. So we don't, if a buyer wants to get a home inspection, we put on the contract, the inspection is for informational purposes only. And we don't negotiate repairs or kind of anything of that sort.
Right. So I'll give you a little bit of what we do there.
Sure.
My partner, Cassie, she's a licensed realtor, so we list everything in-house. Anytime we have a showing, Cassie immediately calls the realtor, kind of just briefly ask about the buyer, what kind of financing, things along those lines. We don't put it in the remarks because we don't want to scare them away. And what they'll do is if they say, okay, this is an FHA buyer, at that point in time, we don't want to waste their time. So we'll tell them up front, like, hey, we're still 45 days away from before we could accept an FHA offer. But if your buyer is willing to meet with our loan officer, we do have some other loans that they offer that could work for the FHA buyer. So if it's the perfect house for them, and what our loan officer does, remember, we're at the peak of our market, right? Like I think everybody kind of understands. So I wasn't in real estate back in 2005, 6, and 7, but from what I hear, it was pretty damn crazy when it came to lending, right?
Right. Oh yeah.
And we're starting to see some of those crazy loans come back.
Absolutely.
So our loan officers have these, what they refer to as creative loans that they can offer to people. So we've actually converted FHA buyers to a conventional loan with a very low down payment, and it works out perfect. So
I like that. Yeah. So that's pretty sweet.
So that's just us making a connection with our mortgage loan officer And then obviously, because we are the realtor ourselves, or I shouldn't say that Cassie is the realtor.
Sure.
We have that direct communication. We're in control of it. And it's just allowed us to sell deals to, I mean, it's minimizing holding costs. You know, I think we probably still would have gotten an offer on the house, but those
Sure.
are the people that wanted it that day. So even if it saved us a week or 2 weeks, hey, that adds up over the course of time.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. So, and I like that a lot. One thing that we do kind of similar to that. So the offer that I got yesterday, so we're doing this on that particular offer.
Mm-hmm.
So we've gotten them to switch to conventional financing.
Yep.
The issue for them is that the down payment is more than it is with FHA, right?
Yep.
So what we've done is we've increased the purchase price on the property, and then we're going to give them cash them back,
right,
some money
like
off
a
of the
seller
purchase
concession.
price. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. That helps them with that increase in cost when you got somebody that really wants that particular property.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the only concern there for anybody that's, you know, maybe they're in a situation, the only concern there would be if they're, you know, it doesn't hit appraisal. That would be the
Correct.
only concern I would have with you. But if you know you're listing it well below, because most of the time when you're wholesaling, you're not selling it for full market value. You're discounting
I think
a little bit.
I think that's a really good point to make too. So like the property that I'm talking about, the ARV on that property is around 160.
Yeah.
Right.
You're going
So
to be fine.
we listed it at 130. You know, it's a livable property, just needs
Right.
some, you know, TLC, right?
Right.
You know, so we were able to bump that purchase price up a little bit to accommodate and still be well below, you know, what the market rate for the property is.
Yeah. So, all right. So what are some other examples of deals that you're doing right now?
Yeah, so some other deals that we're doing are more traditional, you know, wholesale deals. You know, we're trying to really ramp that up and kind of do that with more velocity. And we're doing that based on, I'm real big on text message marketing right now.
Okay. What service do you use?
So I'm using Lead Sherpa right now.
Okay.
I've been using that, I think, since February of 2019. Really great service. There's some really good ones out there. We've worked with Smarter Contact before.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Smarter Contact is a more cost efficient, product that you can kind of go with. We're doing RVMs, and we're using REI Rail to do that.
Okay.
Really like RVMs, and the process that we tend to use is we kind of use a call tree. So we have people call in and kind of get filtered down inside a call rail, right? Mm-hmm. So when somebody calls back off that RVM, you know, they're greeted with a message where they can make a selection to talk to somebody on our team live, you know, or they can press 2 to be removed off of our list, right? Gotcha. And so we're pulling in some really good traction on the wholesale deals with that. My first look at any property is to try to take it as a wholesale, okay. And I'll explain why I like to do that. The reason I like to do wholesale deals is for my private lender relationships. Mm-hmm. You know, it really gives me a good opportunity to keep those strong. You know, we raised a lot of private capital over the last 10 years, but a lot of private capital relationships. Mm-hmm. So as we brought that development business down and focused more on wholesaling, we still had those relationships and people who wanted to deploy capital. So we wanted to find a place for that, right? Yep. So now we do we partner with some of our lenders to do some lending, but we use a lot of that ourselves in effort to purchase these wholesale properties with 100% financing. The intent behind that is so that when the market continues to adjust and the buyer opportunities become a lot stronger for people like me, right? Mm-hmm. That we'll be in a strong position with a war chest of private capital to pick up as much property as we want and transition stronger into that generational wealth model.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think right now, if you talk to anybody that went through 2008, they feel like we're going to have some kind of a correction here coming pretty soon. I had an episode with Gary Boomershine recently, and he feels like we're right there. I couldn't agree more. And from everybody that went through 2008, the advice that they give, and so I'll say it for probably the 100th time on here, is get ready to be flush with cash so you can buy as we're going down and we hit the bottom. Because, man, we've seen people become, I mean, they've achieved generational wealth from buying in 2008 and 2009 and just riding the appreciation wave up and then offloading. And then that's how these people are moving into commercial and multifamily from 1031 exchanging into these larger assets. it's a beautiful
Right.
strategy. It's a beautiful time to be in real estate right now. I think some people are fearful of what's going to happen, but this is a great opportunity. So touche to you for the connections and with your private money and utilizing it right now. You found a way to move away from the thing that was detrimental, the rehabs and the developments, move into
Right.
the hotel and the wholesaling, and just keep those relationships fresh. Even if right now for you, it's so important to keep those relationships intact just for what's going to happen here in the next couple of years. Even if it's 3 or
Exactly.
4 years away from now, it's
Exactly.
vitally
Yes.
important to keep those.
Yeah, we want to keep those strong. The whole goal is to keep runway as short as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about something a couple of years ago that really kind of kicked this off when we were having those cash flow issues. And what that was the thought of, what's your runway in this business? And what I mean by that is, if you're in 20 construction projects or new development projects, rehabs, whatever the case might be, what is your runway to offload that debt if the market just completely bottoms?
Right.
And what I had to determine and what I had to get figured out was my runway is like 12 months,
Mm-hmm.
18 months. We had been land banking different properties and lots to hold to renovate later. And the reality is, if the market goes kaput today, you don't got 18 months to get rid of your debt.
Right.
You just don't, right?
Nope.
And so we've been able to successfully transition into, now that runway looks more like 90 days,
Yep.
right? And so the benefit there is you keep those relationships strong. Market gets too rough, you've got the ability to get out of that debt, keep everybody happy and be in a good position. So I just caution people right now, we're in a time where, it's not like it was 5 years ago where you could just hit it as hard as possible, stack up a bunch of properties, get to them when you could get to them. Now's the time to really be tight and really be efficient with what you're doing. But most importantly, above anything, watching that runway and being conscientious of what that actually looks like.
Yeah, and going back to you talking about your marketing and going direct to seller, you're hitting some of the most cost efficient forms of marketing with the SMS and the
Yeah.
RVMs. Are you doing anything else like direct mail or cold calling, or is it mainly those two strategies?
So we definitely cold call. We cold call heavy. We started cold calling, I want to say about 4 years ago. And, this is before it kind of became a crazy thing in the business,
Right.
right? And I love cold calling. The foundation of my business is cold calling. That's our number one marketing channel.
Mm-hmm.
I hear a lot of people complaining that they're not getting contacts right now and yada, yada, yada.
Right.
Here's the deal, right? Just it's more people are calling.
Yep.
So there's the market has become more saturated. So to surpass that, you got to call more than everybody else.
Yep.
So, if you were buying 2,000 records a month to cold call, now you got to buy 4. Now you got to buy 6. If you were making 200 calls an hour with you or your VA on Triple Dollar or Call Tools, Mojo, now you got to transition into, maybe you got to put 2 or 3 other people on the phone.
Right.
So that you can make more calls. Cold calling is still a really good marketing channel. We got out of direct mail a while back. We were doing a lot of direct mail before we started cold calling.
Mm-hmm.
We got away from that, and just really as a cost perspective, if you take the same 40 cents it takes you to mail one postcard, you can probably get like 20, text messages out of that cost, right, or 20 RVM drops. So that was just a cost perspective. I do think mail is still good. I've seen people say that mail isn't good right now. Direct mail is still good. You got to be able to be consistent. Right. And that's with any marketing channel at the end of the day, but you got to be able to be consistent and you got to be able to get the marketing out.
Yep. So are you familiar with Brent Daniels?
I am. Yeah.
Okay. So Mr. TTP, he came on to Next Level Flipping, Rising Stars Group, our online mastermind. And I want to share a couple of nuggets that he gave us in the group. So if you made it this far in the episode, congrats. You're going to get to see a behind the scenes, some nuggets from Mr. TTP. Talking about cold calling. I found this very interesting because Brent, for you that don't know, TTP stands for Talk to People. And his whole platform is basically on cold calling. but
Right.
also just getting out there and talking to people. And one of the things he said when he was talking about cold calling was, in 2020, door knocking is going to become more important than it ever has in the past.
Agree
Because
100%.
of the amount of people that are cold calling.
I agree with that.
I mean, when he said that, that was eye-opening. You know, this is a guy that's literally built his whole platform on cold calling, and he's saying, hey, buckle down. 2020, door knocking, getting out there in front of their faces is going to be very important. And it's like you said, man, it's just because it's saturated. Everybody's having to buy more data. That's only going to become worse, you know, with SMS and RVM. Now it's like, dude, we use data in every possible way we can. We're going to voicemail you. We're going to call you. We're going to text you. Like, I mean, it's insane. We're even now doing, I've had several guests on here say they're doing email marketing.
Right. I've heard people talking about that.
Yeah. You know,
I haven't done it yet, but I know people are doing it.
I think it was Scott Bowers. It was a couple of episodes ago. And I was like, is it working? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
I got to check that out. Right. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
we're in this interesting space where the data is more critical than anything else.
Yep.
You got to get good at data. You got to be able to analyze your data. And if you're not good at that, you got to get somebody on your team that is, or partner up with somebody that is good at it. But data is the common denominator in having a successful wholesale business right now.
Absolutely. And so I want to ask you a question about your acquisitions, but one last little nugget from Brent Daniels. He ended our little interview. You know, it's a live Q&A session, so everybody had a chance to ask Brent whatever they wanted. And my final question to him was, hey, what's your best advice that you would give to people that are newer in this industry or doing 25 or less deals a year? And he said, first and foremost, make sure that you keep as much money for yourself and for your family as possible. And that's how he ended the interview. Take that for what you want. Brent is a very successful man in this industry. So just take that for what you will.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. So I found that to be very enlightening to hear from someone in his position. And I just wanted to share that with you guys because you brought up cold calling and reminded me of it. As far as acquisitions goes for you, you're sending texts, you're sending RVMs, you're obviously at that point in time getting in contact either through text or on the phone. Are you scheduling appointments or are you trying to contract it right there on the phone?
Great question. Right. So we try to contract over the phone. That's been our motto for a couple of years now. We make our offer on our first initial contact with the seller.
There you go.
And, here's what I personally believe in. We've got it written on a whiteboard in the office. Speed is life.
Yep.
We're all calling the same lists. We're all trying to talk to the same sellers. So it becomes about volume and it becomes about speed. And so at the end of the day, I want to be able to make an offer before anybody else.
Yep.
And the whole goal of cold calling, mail, text messages, voicemail drops is to get in contact with the seller, right?
Yep.
And so we found more success making that offer by phone for sure.
And here's the thing about that. I personally like making offers on the phone. I also think it's important to analyze the seller and kind of get a read from them. Because sometimes, man, when you're talking to like an 85-year-old woman, she might not want to accept an offer over the phone. She might be like, hey, come sit down. I want to see you and things along those lines. But I'm going to share a story because you're talking about specific deals you've done. I'm going to share one that happened last night, man. Do you ever get that itch? Like, you know what? Not enough happened today. I'm going to send out like 100 text messages myself. Do you ever do that? Yeah.
I almost had that same itch this morning.
So that was me last night, man. This is like 5:30. I usually leave the office somewhere between 6 to 7. Okay. This is 5:30 and I'm pretty much done. And I'm like, but we didn't get any appointments today. We didn't get lead. It was kind of like the morale was down. And so I was like, all right, I refreshed an old data list. I didn't want to take it from the people, right? So I went and refreshed old data and I sent out 260 texts. Now, most of them got ignored because it was really old data, but I got one that said, "Can you call me now?" So this immediately led me to believe this person is highly motivated, right? And
Oh
they want
yeah.
to move fast. Call me now. So we get on the phone. We have a 5-minute conversation. She's like, "Vacant house. I need to sell. Got to pay my property taxes." So property taxes in Texas are due in January 31st. So she's like,
Okay.
I got to pay my property taxes. I need to sell this so I can pay those. And she's
Yeah.
like, and I want to move back to Vietnam. So she told us everything. So I was leaving, right? Like I was going home. I was going to go home, see my babies, eat dinner.
Yeah.
But she's like, "House is vacant. There's a lockbox on it. Here's the lockbox code. I need to sell." So I went home and I kissed my babies goodnight. And I said, "Dad has got to go buy a house. I'm sorry, but I got to go. Like the seller
Yeah.
wants it now." We went out there. I drove an hour and 10 minutes to the house. I walked it. She had told us on a separate phone call when we were calling her on the way. She said, "Hey, don't worry. Call me anytime. I only sleep 3 hours a night." So at 9 p.m., when I'm done walking the property, I'm calling her to make the offer on the phone.
100%. Yep.
And we're negotiating as I'm driving my hour and 10 minutes back home. I'm negotiating with her on the phone. We're still about $25,000 off. But I firmly believe we're going to get the deal. And I don't know if we would have gotten the deal if we hadn't moved as quickly. That's what she literally said that. She said, "Hey, I really like y'all. Like y'all move fast like me." You know,
Yep.
she appreciated that. That meant something to her. Because to start off, she wanted 180 and we're offering 125.
But
So
here's what I love about what you're saying, right? Speed is life,
yeah,
right? You had a seller that jumped on the line or said, "Hey, call me right now." You recognize that it was an opportunity that you had to go chase down. And that's also what I was talking about. And I like that you said that piece about, going home and kissing your babies and having to go look at a house and drive an hour and 10 minutes. It's not that we want to do that,
no,
right? We'd much rather stay at home, spend time with our family, relax. And that's what I mean when I say wholesaling is a grinded out business. Being
mm-hmm.
direct to seller is a grinded out business. So you knew, hey, look, I got to go grind this thing out.
Yep.
Right. And the important piece in that I think some people miss is when you're having those conversational cues or clues and a seller is moving aggressively, you have to match their intensity in that conversation. And you got to get that offer out quickly. Because if you didn't get an offer to that seller, if it was, "Oh, well, I got to go and I got to look at the repairs. Oh, I got to go look at some comms. I'll call you tomorrow morning."
Right.
She could have been calling somebody else, right? And that could potentially be an opportunity that you didn't have to build more rapport and kind of extend that negotiation conversation.
She said it to us 4 or 5 times. I get calls all the time. She owns
Right.
it free and clear. So she's getting hammered. Like a
Right.
free and clear house in a great neighborhood in Dallas. She is getting hammered with
Oh
calls,
yeah.
texts, voicemails, everything. She's wanting to work with us. She said, "I don't know why, but I got to sell this house to y'all. We got to find the middle ground here."
There you go.
And every time she says that, she comes down 10K. So I just need her to say it like 3 more times, and we're going to be where we need to be.
Get to that 120.
Right,
Yeah, man.
right.
You've got to negotiation, and I like to make sure that people understand that negotiations aren't quick things all the time.
No.
So sometimes you got to massage that out with the seller and spend some time getting them to the spot that you want them to be at. You don't just put something under contract to have it under contract with the knowing that you can't sell it just to try to renegotiate it later. You got to get good at negotiating and really driving your point home with the seller. And once you find that pain point, you'll get to it eventually. You just got to spend some time on it, and the rapport is critical to keep that connection alive until you get to that common number that you guys need to be at.
For sure. So I want to transition this to you and I are both speaking at our good buddy Antoine Campbell's
man. I'm super excited about it, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's in April. Go on Facebook, just type in Drip 2020 Conference. You'll find it.
It's on there everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere, dude. That guy's a great marketer himself.
Absolutely.
Do you know what you're speaking about?
So I haven't figured that out yet, but probably wholesaling and wholesaling. I'm sure I got to put something together and get that ready. I'm fired up, man. We gotta make sure we get the people the information they
Oh,
need
for
to
sure, man.
be
I'm super
successful.
excited about it. Antoine has given us the ability. We're going to do something pretty cool.
Yeah.
Myself, Cassie, and Jamie Woolley, our good friend and partner at Next Level Flipping. We're going to do a live Q&A session.
Oh, sweet.
The three of us are going to be up there. We're literally going to open it up where, dude, you can ask us anything you want.
I love it.
One of us will know the answer, or if we don't know the answer, we do know the right person to give you the answer.
Yep.
I think it's going to be a great conference. He's got just an awesome lineup of speakers.
Dude, he's got an all-star lineup in there, man.
Oh, for sure, man. And I don't know how big it's going to get. I think I saw a post earlier this week. He's announcing like 4 or 5 more people.
Yeah, he said he might add a day.
There you go. He's going to have to, man. He's got so many people. But I actually got to meet Antoine at Wholesaling here in Houston. And, man, what an amazing guy, him and his wife. And
they're the best, man.
So the tickets are super affordable. I think it's going to be highly informative. So if you enjoyed what you saw today between me and Chris, I think this is pretty much how it's going to go down. We're going to be accessible, all the speakers. I mean, are you going to be there for all the days?
I'm there the whole time, man. I like how you said that, man. It's good for people to know we're accessible.
Yeah.
I know you get DMs all the time. I get them all the time. You can't get to everyone, right? But going to these events is so important, right? For the past 10 years, I've invested in my education. I've made sure that I've gone to masterminds. I've made sure that I've went to events. That's how I've built a lot of relationships that I have in the industry. I've done a lot of business with people that I've met at these events. You got to come out. You got to go to these things, because if you don't, people don't know who you are, right?
Well, and I've said it, man. Majority of my private money has come from masterminds and events like this.
Mine too. 100%.
So for the people that were sitting there wondering, like, hey, Chris, how did you raise all that private capital? Well, there you go.
Going to events.
Gold nugget.
Going to events
like this, man, and get out there. The gold is not sometimes with the event and the speakers. It's
right.
The dinners and the lunches and the breaks and the people that you're with and how you carry yourself. And man, it's just, they're so powerful, And
if you can pay a couple of $100, and I think Antoine's even got, he'll help you out as far as payment plan, right?
Yeah.
Not a lot of people do that. You're paying for the opportunity to just, one, make a connection, right? Create a new relationship. You might find your business partner there. You might find your lender there. You might find a mentor there. But also at the same time, you might just get that aha light bulb moment that completely changes the trajectory of your entire business.
Yeah.
Just within a couple of days. But you got to invest in yourself and show up for those kind of things.
Absolutely. And just like I said, be cognizant of how you carry yourself. When you go up to talk to people, make it a reciprocal conversation. Don't go up to Chris and be like, hey, Chris, I got this question. I need you to help me.
Right.
Where you're helping Chris out too, man. I mean, that's very important in how you carry yourself and how you build relationships. It's just like any other relationship in your life. So, man, thank you so much for taking the time today, coming on. I know you're a busy guy. Any final thoughts before we sign off here?
No, man, it's a pleasure, man. I appreciate you having me on. Like I said, I've been following you for a while. I know we've been friends on Facebook, so I'm glad we had a chance to talk today. I see you impacting people's lives, man, and doing awesome stuff. Guys, if you want to catch up with me, you can follow me on Instagram at the Chris Jefferson. Again, the Chris Jefferson. You can follow me on Instagram, and I appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So now it's time that I do my signature sign off. I have multiple people messaging me about this now, so I guess I kind of created a thing. So if you're listening on iTunes, leave me a 5-star rating. If you don't want to leave me a 5-star rating, take your 4 or below star rating and give it to someone else. I only accept 5-star ratings. If you're listening on YouTube, give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe and the notifications so you know when we have new videos come out. That's our show for this week, guys. We'll see y'all next week.